Tumeona kuna mtu hapa anauliza what happens to people like Jerotich Seii when they get to public offices. Wanasema case in point Rachel Omamo. Sababu Rachel Omamo kitambo alikuanga mtu hatari sana. Lakini siku hizi she is reduced to a pale image of herself. And it's general. You look at people like Muhammad Ali, who are firebrand people getting systematic oppression and all that. Today, they are part of the things that they used to fight. You look at every other person who has been out here and doing public office. And I think labda kuna mashetani pale we need to exercise the office, the political office. What happens to good people who get into politics or into leadership and become bad?
I think it's a power of impunity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anybody can practice impunity if they know they can get away with it. As kids, when we were growing up, we knew that if we were naughty, and mom or dad didn't find out, or auntie or uncle or teacher didn't find out, or Kogo or Kugo did not find out, then you can get away with it. I think there's a culture of impunity within the system. Whether it is a legislature, whether it's the executive, whether it's a judiciary, people can get away with literally murder sometimes, but often theft. Oh, hello. Sure.
Good morning.
Morning, Bitok. How are you?
Salama sana, how are you?
Fine. This is Solela.
Yes. Niambie dadi.
Salama sana. So, first, I congratulate our tacklers, Lucia and Jerotich, for the good topics they have brought forward. So, I have 4 issues to address.
Yes, very quickly.
So, one of them is the commodification of public goods. So, because when you look at other countries such as China, Singapore, and South Korea, they allow public sector to come in, as Jerotich was giving an example of solar power in Nyanza. Such that what the cartel and the government have decided is that they commodify each and every public good, then they make it so expensive for you even for a common mananchi to acquire the service. Such that so that they can find a way to be able to milk the citizen. So my question will go to Jerotich. How can the citizen be able to reverse this trend? Yes, we appreciate the work she's doing, and she's doing by going to court, but she needs more support because the citizens also must be re-educated. We need to re-educate our citizens. So how can we be able to do this? Because people in rural areas are suffering because it does not make sense to charge the same price of electricity for someone who is in, say, Nairobi, and charge the same price for someone in Budalangi who even does not have a home, and by the time 6 months they have not had access to electricity. But when Kenya Power returns the electricity, they will be charged for those 6 months they have not been able to access power. 2, on the issue of governance. We are seeing a trend where the governors and the president, they have their deputies, but they decided not to give them work, and these people are consuming public resources. They are consuming our taxes, but their bosses just decide to put them under their mercy. So, it's a worrying trend for us, and how can we be able to think on how to sort it? Then thirdly, I was reading a newspaper where we have a mad person, for lack of word, where he says that we will have mandatory cleanup. This kind of language cannot be used on citizens. Maybe in military camps it's acceptable, but it's only us citizens who are allowed to use such as mandatory because our taxes are being used. So, be it mandatory, let it be mandatory in camps, but we will not clean up because we pay taxes. It will only be mandatory if we will be paid upfront. Then they tell us we have paid you upfront to clean your neighborhood. Then it's mandatory. And lastly, we have for a long time elected our representatives on their terms. It is a high time that we decide to elect them on our terms, because it is also foolhardy for anybody to cajole that elect me so that I can be able to sort out the perennial flood issue in Budalangi. And these people of Budalangi pay taxes. People of Mandera pay taxes. So we don't need anybody to cajole us to elect them so that we can sort out our problems. We need to sort out our problems because he has decided that that's the job he wants to do. Thank you.
All right. That's what you mmekubali kuingia kwa military. Tafadhali mkuwe tayari mnunue vifagio. Every month mtakuwa mnaosha town na kupanguza na kufagia. Don't ask questions. Nunua kifagio. That is actually that is a reward of militarizing there. And those are discussions we need to have. I was saying Sonko has come on guns blazing for the last week. He has been attacking the president for the last 3 days. And I mean, these things are jokes until it gets serious. The way you attack you, they are laughing about it, until it becomes a problem. Abdullahi, good morning. Habari ya Mandera?
Salama sana, tuko sawa sisi.
Leta habari. Umenunua kifagio? Nisikia unakuja Nairobi, unakuja na kifagio. Huku tutakuwa tunafagia town every month.
Huku sasa 4.5 million Nairobians against, let's say, 30,000 people with guns. How are they going to administer that?
Mtaosha town mpende msipende na kupanguza KICC madirisha.
Yeye aanze kwanza hiyo ya kanjo aoshe mbadi, sisi tutaosha yetu. I'm following Jerotich, and most Kenyans must know that first of all, leaders are not supposed to solve our problems. They're just supposed to make laws that are going to prosper this country. Kenyans are paying tax. They just need to have some financial prudence. Now, an issue of someone once said that good governance never depends on laws, but upon personal qualities of those who govern. The machinery of government is always subordinate to the will of those who administer the machinery. The most important element of government, therefore, is the method of choosing leaders. Now, in Kenya, as Kenyans, we need to understand that whether you are in Mandera or Nyamira or Bondo or wherever, Budalangi, like my friend was talking about, we all have the same problem. On the issue of energy, like Northeastern, we have, luckily, with the grace of God, the abundance of the sun. Upepo tuko naye nyingi, Mungu ametupatia. Kama hatuna mvua, tuko na jua na tuko na wind. So what we need is people. I ask one question, and I also want my sister to Jerotich to help me. Who are the thinkers of this country? Who think for us? Because, like, if you look at the Magoha-led ministry, they're bringing a new curriculum or syllabus for Kenya. If you look at it, it has been borrowed from Finland.
From where? Senegal?
Finland.
Oh, Finland. Okay.
They just played around with the word. If you study it carefully, you will realize that most of the things they're saying are done in Finland, a European country that has the ratio of pupil to teacher at 13:1. Huku Northeastern, wale wa Kenya tuliandika kutoka Kiambu na Murang'a na huko Bungoma wametoroka. So at primary we have 70 pupils against 1. Secondary we have 100 students at 1. At a school of 400 secondary school students, we have only 5 teachers. So when you look at Magoha in Nairobi, he has not come to Mandera. I look at him and I'm like, a school of 5 teachers, and then you want to happen amid all this COVID chaos. The schools have no permanent water. And then I think Magoha doesn't know that African children wait for each other outside their homes. So by the time they are going to school, they go in groups, even in those buses. So if there will be corona pandemic amongst one of them, then by the time they are going to school, they are all infected. So how is Magoha going to separate kids who have already infected each other from their houses?
It's left for him now. Maybe he'll put doctors in every home.
Hugo Mandela, some schools, like, they will have 50 kilometers to have a nurse, not a doctor or a specialist or a surgeon or a physician, a nurse. 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers. So we need an overhaul of our whole system. We have people in Kenya who have integrity. We have every community has decent people. But those decent people must come together. Yesterday I was seeing that they were telling us our Kikuyu brothers and Jaluos are meeting in Nyanza. I was asking, what happens to the other communities? Can they also meet and discuss their political dispensation?
Uh-huh.
So Kenya needs sober minds and say, we need the work of the government is to govern.
Uh-huh.
Our role is to pay taxes, and those in position of leadership must use these resources prudently so that we improve our country. 30% of our budget is stolen at the budgetary level.
Uh-huh.
So we need the like-minded Kenyans like Jerotich there. I always watch her on KTN News. So what we like to do is, there are many Kenyans who will have ideas and will want this country to change. I have young children. I don't want them to suffer as I'm suffering right now.
Okay, Abdullah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Asante. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Bitok.
Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine. This is Governor Pino Kendo.
Oh, Governor Mushatu.
Yes, sir.
What are the Munene?
Gosi na kauli mudo anyeta.
Oweko.
Ni bere mudo man.
Asga mekura samaki na therapia.
I'm enjoying today's show. We talk about issues of governance. They're very close to my heart. And I think one of the problems we have in this republic is selective application of law and order. I think that's what we are suffering from today. People get to power and they forget that there was a process that got them to that position. And you see, Pama, there is a saying in our Kikuyu that says, now, translating that is saying that there is no crown that will always ring on that one head forever.
Inazunguka.
There always comes a time when you have to hand over that crown. And I think for me, that is where the mistake we make. We are getting young people, we are giving them positions, they get up there and they forget the process that got them to that position. I think that is what is happening with our ruling party called Jubilee. These fellas who are kneeling down in almost every church every other weekend. Wakiwekelewa mikono karibu wawekelewe miguu. Lakini walienda wakasahau. That is why you see the other day in Murang'a they were throwing tear gas in a church when mamas are playing. And I think for me, as we are talking about governance, people must accept to put value in the system of government that we have. I don't believe for one moment that we would really need a constitutional movement to make this country great. I think, I don't know whether you have seen a tweet by Mwari Mutinda. He has tweeted the president driving a motorbike. I'm told that it is one of those that was donated by WL. And then he puts a caption that says that a rare moment of the president delivering fake promises.
Finally, we have a picture evidence.
I will tell you that but I'm just flying away from the comical part of it. It is Kenyans expressing the disappointment they have, putting up a government that they had so much hope in. This government has all other governments combined. Corruption cases cannot even be half of what this government has administered. And I think for me is that as a citizen, we have refused take up our role of checking on our government. We have refused to deliberately put government to task. Some of us have become what you call, if you read about the dynasties that have been there over the years, there was something that we used to call court poets. Their sole responsibility was to get praises for the king. Whether the king is naked, whether the king is high, whether the king is taking the wrong direction, their work is simply to tell the king, may you live forever. You shall not die. You shall live forever.
What a job.
That is what we have reduced ourselves to. We Kenyans, we have become court poets. We continue singing praises to those who continue to oppress us.
All right.
Yes, and until the time we wake up like our guests there and say enough is enough, we shall continue to be tied up in this case of poverty. So for me, I think Kenyans need to feel what they are feeling now. I want the rest down they feel now to sink down in their hearts. So that as we come to the corner where we change leadership, we shall change leadership based on the deliverables that person can give us.
Sio mastori.
Yes.
Haya, sasa gavana.
Nimeshukuru sana.
Na waje kupotea.
Mtoka Nairobi mkuja mvurute hewa ya Limuru ni mzuri haina.
Utakuja kuvuruta hewa lakini ujue sasa kuingia Nairobi kuanzia next month lazima visa ni kifagio. Kama una kifagio usijaribu kanyaga Nairobi.
Let me tell you. Yeah, nobody needs to be informed. Nairobi is not a cocoon of disciplined forces where people take orders without questioning.
Are you about to question? I'll not.
He is so taken up by the fact that he was in the army, where he tells people to jump and they jump. He should know that this is Nairobi.
And you guys will fight back.
Kwa lugha ya mtaa tunasema ajue hili ni jiji.
Ajue ni town. Haya sawa ndugu yangu. Kuwa na siku njema. We pick the last call. All right. Simu ya mwisho. Vipi?
Yes, Gerard.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Watafuta kifagio?
Mimi naitwa Lele.
Mambo Hilary.
Niko poa.
Pole leo nimekuita Hilary Kosgei badala ya Lele. Pole sana. Apologize.
Sasa hebu salimia Chero na Lucia.
Chero unasalimiwa.
Tumesalimikeko.
Unajua umesema vizuri sana Chero. Nikakumbuka I went back to the village for a minute.
Sasa unajua kuna mtu ameuliza swali kwa comment. Which actually ni nataka kuuliza. Unajua I watched Millie Odhiambo. Millie Odhiambo alikuwa Cradle. Inaitwa Cradle International.
Alikuwa wapi?
It was Cradle.
She used to run an NGO called Cradle International. I think it was about kids and something. She used to be very sober, very issue-oriented. Muda ameuliza what happens when people join politics because Millie Skizi chenye anaongea is out of touch reality. She no longer represents what she was. I used to be a very big admirer of Millie. Now, unajua hii swali nauliza Chero because I see her going the same path because I have watched her.
Hata mimi nimeamua kuachana siasa narudi kufungua kanisa nikuwe pastor. Acha niekelee watu mikono. I've been a follower.
Yes. Nimempata kuanzia kitambo mpaka ile siku alianza kuwa guest speaker KTN News akiwa na Ben Kitili na kina nani Bichache. No, she's issue oriented. She has passion to want to change things.
Ndio nimeshtuka umesema ati anaelekea huko na unaona Chero na korada mbaya.
What usually happens when someone is elected to office? I think what is she? Does she know that there is there's that disconnect. How does she want to handle that so that akishaingia hapo, akishaingia elected office or position of leadership, and assist could represent the issues. She's passionate about, especially KPLC. She's very passionate about issues that really affect us as citizens. Now, I can't rule out the fact that maybe she will want to run for office at some point, and I think she is going to be successful. She has everything that it takes. How is she going to navigate that? Akishakuwa huku anaona ni kama kwa the other side of the fence. You get me?
Nimekuelewa ndugu.
That's my question for the morning. I think that is she can explain that.
Asante sana bro. Wacha tatuambia, lakini mwana pale kama ni mapepo kwa foundation kuna kitu iliwekwa. Nafaa ibomolewe tuanze fresh. Mtu mwenye alichimba foundation lazima kuna kitu kiliwekwa hapo ndani.
Ya pale nilisikia ati all 300 and something of them want to come for the Jerusalem dance. Alafu something very petty. Alafu when it comes to issues in affect wananchi, they don't show up.
That's very funny. Sawa ndugu yangu, kwa na siku njema bwana.
Wewe pia.
Thank you so much, take care. Alright, tutafungia hapo masimu kwa leo kwa sababu ya wakati, naona we still have almost 5 minutes or 7 minutes kabla hatujamaliza programu. Wanauliza nimeona kuna mtu hapa anauliza kama umeoleka na naona yako in a relationship. I don't know. It's a pepper shindwe. Anyway, sawa. Anyway, guys, let's look at the I know you've been picking up the questions from the listeners. I'll give you an opportunity to do your reaction.
Thanks very much. For the first caller who talked about what we need to do as citizens, I mean, I could have just stayed complaining quietly about my electricity bills forever. I think as citizens, we have a responsibility, where possible, to educate ourselves or listen to information. I was educated by people also about the energy sector, and I'm not from the energy sector, but I have read so in depth that I'm familiar, I'm aware, and we seek all possible sources for correction and redress. We are in court. We had a demonstration last year. We do a lot of public education via social media. So citizens need to be active. That's why I call myself an active citizen. And the more of us know that we are being robbed, it's not our fault, it's not atituliacha mata on and so on and so forth, the more we can rise up as a collective block, as Lucia was saying, and speak up and out like the youth in Nigeria about the security force. I want to say this mandatory cleanup business is crazy. It is unconstitutional. Niko na fagio nyumbani, and I will clean my house and keep my, but no, it is unconstitutional what is happening. And by the way, if they want us to sweep the city, they might as well remove our taxes, so that they say use your taxes for other things, but once a month you'll come and clean your cities. Whatever is happening, whether we like the idea of cleanup or not, it is unconstitutional. And I'm glad that this issue of NMS is continuously being challenged in court. The gentleman from Mandera, I agreed with him about leaders and how we get them in place. For me, if we don't reform the IEBC, and you know, it doesn't matter who you want to have in power. We might want Gerald as president, but if the powers that be have a different idea, and IEBC is instrumentalized the way it has been over the years, we will never have the will of the people respected at the polls. So IEBC is the first place to reform, even as people are politicking now. If IBC is not touched, if IBC is not reformed, servers will continue to be in France, where this and that, and we will have violence. You saw what happened in 2007. You also saw what happened in 2017, and then you eventually had NRM, etc., etc. And then he asked, who are the thinkers of the country? We are all thinkers in this country. We have to stop allowing other people to think for us. No one has a monopoly on thinking. So when you have thought leaders who talk about education, and then they're ignored by Akina Magoha, they're ignored by the curriculum people, these are the thinkers out there. But the problem is they are not in power, or they are not in positions of decision making. So they can think all they like, speak all they like, but the powers that be have been told to think, or have decided to think a particular way. But we are all thinkers as Kenyans. And then a very important issue. Oh, and by the way, Finland, it's true. How can we be told now we do like Finland? Finland has the infrastructure. They have a small population. They know how to we cannot forever ape other systems all over the world and say, this is how we shall run our education. Finally, will I change? Millie Odhiambo is a friend of mine, and I knew her when she was executive director of Cradle, and she's still a friend of mine. In fact, Millie Odhiambo was one of the first people to say, on this matter of 2/3, we are wrong. As Parliament, we are wrong. In fact, as they are gathering to do Jerusalem, on several occasions, when they were to vote on 2/3 gender rule, many parliamentarians would leave the House of Parliament and go sit in the lounge somewhere and wait for voting to happen. They deliberately sabotaged quorum. They have been disobedient. And I thank Millie for being one of the ones who say, enyewe hapa tumekosea. And the advisory by the CJ to the president is correct because we have violated the constitution. But about leadership, and I had said it earlier on before the first call came in, when there's impunity, there's disobedience. So if you think you're going into a system that is rotten and dirty to change it from the inside, and you find so much rot and dirt, it is entirely possible that you get sucked into it. So what we need to do is clean the rot and the dirt, take away impunity, so that when you go in there, you're bound by a set of rules that you cannot violate, even if you felt tempted to. But that said, these are very important questions. How do you know I won't change if I get into elective politics and I win a position and I'm somewhere? How do you know I won't change? You don't know. You have to believe and trust that what I say is what I will do. But when I get into a position of power and decision making, I cannot be in a rotten, dirty, corrupt place. I cannot say tomorrow I will be CS Energy. When the place is dirty, the first thing we have to do is rid the energy sector of the thieves and the cartels. Then you can run a clean network. Or else Jerotich can become CS Energy all she likes, and you'll all be shouting at me because you'll say I have made no difference there, because the cartels, the thieves, the momentum of impunity and disobedience and corruption and theft was so powerful that one individual, himself or herself, cannot change it. That's why when you talk about Gichopevo, you talk about Milio, you talk about others, at the end of the day, one person alone cannot change a system that is rotten. So let's change the architecture, the system that allows impunity to thrive. So that's what I'd like to say in response to those who have called in.
I always say, my voice alone is not enough. We have the same systemic structures that were used by our colonizers. We've never changed. We haven't changed the way our police are trained. Our policemen are trained to believe that we are the enemy. The way government operates is still the same way that colonialists operated. That is why when you protest, all of a sudden GSU wametumwa. When you speak your truth, Subaru inakungojea hapo chini. It's just the colonial structural system. And it's going to take the whole country to have it changed. One person alone cannot. Jesus already came and he went. We are waiting for him to come again if we live to get there. But then there is no Messiah that is going to deliver Kenya from the structural issues that we have in our systems. It is only when we decide to stop accepting mediocre services from our government that we will change that. When we elect our leaders, it is important to vet them, something that Kongamano la Mageuzi is trying to enshrine in our thinking, because we don't vet our leaders. We vote our leaders based on whatever it is they're selling us. It's like marrying a girl based on her Instagram profile. You don't know who she is. You've only seen her photos and her videos. And you decide, oh, this is the girl I want to marry. Or this is the boy I want to get married to. It doesn't work like that. It shouldn't work like that. You see, you have to vet your leaders. You have to know their ideologies, their principles, the people that they are. We never knew who Mohammed Ali Gichopevu was. We only saw what he wanted us to see. That is why now we are crying foul, because he's gone there and he's now the person that he truly is, and we don't like it. And you see, we can avoid this if we just take a minute to vet our leaders, as much as we vet our house girls, as much as we vet our employees. You know, all the people that come into our life, we even vet people we want to be friends with. You know, you have to look at someone, the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they carry themselves, before you decide, oh, now I can be friends with these ones. So why don't we do that when it comes to our leaders? We are okay placing our future in the hands of people we don't know, total strangers, just because alikuja na akasema very nice things that you wanted to hear. But then that is the language of politicians. They'll always tell you what you want to hear, and they'll never do it because it's not in their interests to empower you to a place where you can question them. They don't want to be questioned. And once we start questioning them and holding them accountable, then that's when they will understand that the power lies with us, because we the people have the power. It's not them. We give this power to them, and then we put them on a pedestal that is so high that they become a demigod, and anything said against them just takes us to war. And that needs to stop.
It needs to change.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have a tackle of the day?
My tackle of the day today goes to Kenyans who don't have water in their taps. Shida yetu ni nini? Tunafaa kukuwa na maji kwa tap. Shida yetu ni nini? Mbona hatu demandi maji? It's time that we stood up and demanded for water. Dams cannot be spilling over. People cannot be dying of floods. Lakes cannot be, like, there is water everywhere in this country except in our taps. So I think I need to borrow some notes from my sister Jerotich Seii and turn on Nairobi taps.
You don't want to turn them off?
No, we don't want to turn them.
You want to turn
they're
them
already off.
So you want to turn them on.
We need them to be turned on. Like, come on, Nairobi water, turn these taps on. Na hizo water points za badi manze, they're not working. General, reconsider. Hatupati maji from hizo water points. They're not helping us. Ziko tu hapo kama flower girls, the same way your leaders are looking like.
Hatari. Chunga usiambi uwache Nairobi peke yako next month.
Siwezi shindwa.
Jerotich. Basi nimeona umesema hapo utakuwa 2022 Speaker National Assembly.
Hey,
These guys are
say that. I have to practice order.
And you also need to learn. You need to learn how to live with impunity.
I will never. That's one thing I will never learn.
Because that is where impunity thrives.
How to live with impunity. My tackle: switch off KPLC. Stop these thieves. That's all I'll always say. And of course, dissolve Parliament.
Sasa hata tusingoje 2022. You could be speaker next week.
Higher.
You never know.
Higher. Amen to that, by the way.
But anyway, the thing is, if we are going to re-engineer, then we need a new, we need new architects in place. You cannot say you want to re-engineer using the same crook who designed it. So probably we need these things bit by bit. We get in new people. They say, at times when you're having coffee, you introduce coffee into water. Bit by bit, you never know. As we had the dose, one day we'll have coffee. As we had the dose of sober people, one day probably we'll have a leadership that thinks about the people. And that is fine. I really appreciate that you made time for us.
Thank you for giving me
By the way, Emilio Diambo, I think, should be coming in this week to give us a rejoinder.
Tell her I say hi. No, she's a good woman. She's a fantastic person. I think, yeah. And I don't think that she went in. For example, she'll talk about how she was supported via affirmative action and eventually was elected into power. The thing is, people belong to political parties, and when you belong to political parties, you have to toe the line of your leader. So I think when we conflate political party dynamics and the persona, then we make mistakes, because I think she's really a solid human being, an excellent professional, and she's done a lot of good. And she was one of the first people to say, "Nyo hapa tumekosea." But I still say, all those people still sitting in parliament, it doesn't matter whether they're Tanga, Kieleweke, whoever, wherever, they are all sinking in the same boat, because all of them are practicing impunity and they thrive on impunity. So we want to see those with integrity who stand up and walk away and not give us long kizungu mingi, sijui, we are waiting for this other thing to be processed. Oh no, you cannot do this. We'll have anarchy, we'll have chaos. We already have chaos and anarchy in this country because of poor leadership and lack of correct direction at the very top. And so for us as Kenyans, if we say go home, in fact, that will save us a wage bill. In fact, as of today, some of the LSK directives will stop paying salaries You know, those guys have been sitting there. I hear now somebody told me on Twitter, go and take selfies outside Parliament. These guys are on recess. For all you know, they could be on recess until 2022 to avoid being dissolved. But at the end of the day, you're looking at people who have all benefited from impunity. So where are those one or two people? Even if you remember Sodom and Gomorrah, they said, where is the one good person? Show me one good person and I will save this place. And even as Kinalot were leaving, see, the wife turned around and she turned into a pillar of salt. Show me one or two good people who are willing to stand up and be counted and not be afraid of by-elections, not be afraid of stepping down and saying, even while we're waiting for the president to figure out what this advisory is all about, which is, by the way, extremely clear, I'm stepping down because I have failed in my duty as a legislator. Yeah.
That one person, Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah, kuna mambo. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. It was really a pleasure to have you. We have to see you again. We hope to see you again very soon. Wale majamaa ambao mmekuwa the tacklers that have been tuned in all this time, thank you so much for that. Wives have been
People don't know their wives and they've been in marriage for very long.
Mambo ya vetting.
Omba wa mama advice.
You talk of vetting and yet many of us don't even understand well their wives having
having been in marriage
for too long cannot agree. The tackle from Dublin Dubai in the Prince Sad. Walisema, just an advice to Robbie Jeps is that they said the day you'll understand why pizza is round, is in a box square and is eaten in triangles, is the day you'll understand women. The same game with governance. Sikutelewa kwa nini pizza is round, it's in a square box and it's eaten in triangles. That's when we can have that conversation. But until then, wish a very great week, a very great day. I hope you guys are going to have a good start to the week. It's always a pleasure to have you. Tunawapenda zaidi as a tackle. Kama as usual, tuma biashara yako. Unafanya biashara gani? Nambari, tutumia link, alafu pia tusaidie na picha ya kazi yako. If it's a product that you sell, then tunawapiga shout-out asubuhi. Kesho, Fast 10 gets their airtime. Until then, the tackle ends now. And bye-bye. Mungu wapende zaidi. See you.